I read once, passingly, about a man named Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, "To be or not to be." He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I say that if you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, brown, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. As you see, that was Malcolm at Oxford, England, December 1964. Mind you, he died or was murdered, assassinated, February 19th, it's 21st, on Friday. But today we have Malcolm Xavier Combs, a young man that was in the news about not being able to put his name on a sweatshirt, a senior sweatshirt, at the High School of Christ the King. And we're giving Malcolm a little review of the old Malcolm. This is Malcolm at his last days, when he wasn't such an extremist or anti-white or the white man's the devil. I'm sure you've heard all the stories. But he had reformed, he had transformed himself from willing to work with anybody, no matter what color you were. But today we see some of that same zeal coming from the youth protesting about high school shootings. So you're of that age. How do you feel about these protests? And you see a Malcolm, you're the young Malcolm of today. Now, you're spirited by, I'm sure you're moved by these protesters of a high school. Well, you're a high school senior yourself, yeah. So how do you clue into all this?
I think it's amazing that nowadays that teenagers, people my age, can protest, and that they actually do protest, because at my school today, we had a walkout which was supported by the school, but we had a walkout where everybody walked around the little circle around the school parking lot, kinda. So I just think it's really cool that the school allowed us to voice that.
Well, you're Malcolm X. You see yourself in this role. You have to realize what you've inherited here. You see how he was willing to change his whole thing around and realizing, well, he didn't start out at 17. At 17, he was a gangster. I mean, well, not a, I don't think he was, well, he was a hustler. Yeah. You know, what you had, he did what you had to do to survive in those days. Because we were all on the planned genocide back in those days. It's still happening today. This is all, we have to understand, as being a black youth, you're part of a plan. You see Trump, he has eliminating any good thing Obama did. So those 8 years that we have a president, which I lived to see a black man in the White House, you know, being an elder, that was amazing. That was a blessing from God as far as I was concerned. And he was a fair man. He wasn't a black president, he was an American president. So he played everything by the rules and took the hits as they did, and I mean, to me, he was beautiful about everything he did. But as a result of that, the jealousy and envy of Donald Trump, which I'm 5 years his senior, so I know how he came up, and he's a New Yorker. So we see a New York con in the White House. So you as Malcolm Jr. have to get out there and protest. So the leading energy of you're the leading energy of today. As Malcolm said, I'll work with anybody. I don't care what color you are. because we have to change the hypocrisy of America. Now, what are you about your lead? Now we're going to go to Betty Shabazz, which is Women's Month, and we have your mother here. And tell us a little bit about what happened at Xavier School, high school. Tell us what happened to Christ the King Church, Christ the King
Oh, in
High
regards
School.
to Malcolm.
In regards to Malcolm.
Well.
People that don't know.
Oh, sure. Well, it was February 5th. It was a Monday, and Malcolm texted me and informed me that he was called into the principal's office, and he said, "You'll never guess why." And I'm trying to figure out why, because he's never in trouble. And he said, "For my name." So now I'm really confused, and I'm saying, "What do you mean you're in the office for your name?" And he says, "Well, they told me that I can't put Malcolm X down on my shirt because he's someone that I shouldn't want to be associated with." So now I'm aghast, because I can't imagine that in 2018 that this mindset is still prominent. You know, so a bit of it was shock. And I'm saying, "Are you sure this is what it is?" And he's like, "Yeah, they pulled me out of my English advanced placement class first thing in the morning to inform him that he wouldn't be able to use that." And then they said, well, because they don't use nicknames, you know, or what have you, but there were children that had nicknames on their sweaters.
Okay.
He was a late order, so he actually got to see other kids with nicknames on their sweaters. This
Okay.
is one of the reasons why he definitely thought, well, I can put Malcolm X, which truly is not his nickname,
But
it's his
real
name.
But you have it registered as Malcolm Xavier Combs, right?
Well, on the form, it didn't allow for middle initial. It just said first, last name.
Okay.
But
they know at the school that's his name.
But they know it because he is in a Microsoft program, and
Okay.
he has a certificate, and it says Malcolm Xavier Combs on that certificate.
Okay.
So they kind of tried to go through, since they couldn't really get out of the fact that they knew it was Xavier, they tried to go another way and say his name would cause discourse and disharmony if that was put on a sweater, that the school is unified and that this may cause trouble. And then they went on to say that he was controversial. And they kept coming up with different reasons. And that's when, you know, I went to Kevin McCall and got him involved.
Right.
And then we met with them. And this is when this all snowballed into him being controversial. And, you know, as people do, they have a good blacklist and then a bad blacklist, meaning Barack O, they said would be okay if he could put that there. Martin L. Is okay. You know, but Malcolm X is on the no list. Al Sharpton's on the no list. So they have their own, you know, little
revolutionaries.
list. Exactly.
Well, Christ the King was a revolutionary.
Exactly, right. You know, so then it just became, well, you know what, we're going to have to speak a little louder because you're not hearing us. And then we began to rally. We've been on different shows, different newspapers, radio, just trying to get it out. And it's not necessarily, it started about a sweater, but it is more than that. It's about, one, your civil right to your name.
Right.
Two, for you to intimidate and antagonize a student and you're using your power, you're abusing it, basically, and then you laughed at him. I'm sorry, forget that.
That's right.
That they mocked him and said, "Oh yeah, he's the new Malcolm X," and began to laugh.
What did that feel like, man? I mean, we went over this once before, but I can't imagine them laughing at you. This is in Black History Month, right?
February 5th.
What is wrong with these? Well, I know what's wrong with them, but I imagine, what did you think? How did it really hit you?
It was just more shocking, disturbing, because I just stood there silent. I was literally in a silent state of shock that they would trap me in the office, basically, and keep me there to laugh at me. And it just felt really unprofessional the way it all happened.
Wow, wow.
And it just was a crazy moment.
That's you just thought, what are they doing, huh?
Yeah.
They're doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
But you're an honest student,
Yeah.
and you didn't know where the principal's
No.
office was. So you're one of the good kids.
Yeah. They
But
just don't care.
did they know you at all?
I don't think more of the assistant principal, because I don't usually talk to her.
Okay.
But I mean, more around the school, like they know that I don't really get into trouble.
Right. So, but they knew your name was Malcolm X, right? But I don't understand why they would do that.
Because they feel as if.
She asked me if my real name was Malcolm X too, and
Yeah.
I nodded yes.
Yeah.
Even told them. And the thing that's
Well,
what
they
really
should have
bothered
looked it
me.
up beforehand.
Well, not even that they should have looked it up. All they had to do was call me.
Right.
You know, if you have an issue with anything with someone's child, you
Right,
would
you call the
contact
parent.
the parent.
Right.
And
Right.
then we could have had a civil conversation
Right.
as to what was going on. But it moved from you being professional to you just having, it's just a tone of racism. When you now start to laugh at him. You know, they said that the form said first and last name.
Right.
If that were the case, then you call them in and say, look, this is what it is. Would you like your first name or your last name? But they took it to another level of laughing at him and such. And the thing that really bothered me is they have this form that says first name, last name, and it says no nicknames, right? And that's true,
Right,
they do.
okay.
But then in-house, they send an email to the parents stating that they do allow nicknames. So now in public eye, it looks as if we're just trying to force them to go against a principle, you know, or against a rule. But in-house, they sent an email stating, well, we do allow nicknames, you know, and they even allowed initials. So now it's become discriminatory.
Well, how are your classmates treating you and the rest of the people in the school?
The classmates are really supportive. Like, they've been with me since day one, and they've been asking me anything they could do, stuff like that. So within the classmates is good. It's just the administration, even the teachers, I can kind of tell that they want to be supportive. Yeah, that they're embarrassed. Like, the librarian said she feels bad for what happened to me. Like, there's like silent support because they can't really speak up and say anything because they feel threatened.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And we know that these principals were Trump supporters.
Yes.
So they're obviously racist. So, I mean, it's obvious fact. I mean, no doubt about it.
Well, we'll say, I don't know what the principal, but I will say that the president of the school adamantly made it very clear that he voted for Trump. He made it very clear. I will say that.
Well, I'll call him a racist. You don't have to. I'll do that. Okay. But we're doing something about this, of course. But I mean, it's a lesson to be learned that no matter how far you get, maybe this is important. That maybe we'll do a little thing. I love this copy of the Lost Tapes, which you saw yourself, right? And I got an eye opener. All this is a lesson for me because I had never heard Betty speak before. So when I saw this, I said, "Oh my goodness, this woman is absolutely gorgeous." I knew her, I knew of her, but I never heard her really speak.
Right.
So let's play Betty. Which one? The first one we ran. Betty and Malcolm. All right. I got so many back there. I was hoping.
With all that Betty Shabazz was suffering, having witnessed her husband being killed, her 4 children were at her side at the time, she somehow gathered up the strength to do this interview, which we share with you now.
What was his attitude toward his family?
Well, contrary to popular belief, his attitude towards his family was a very warm one. And although my husband traveled a lot, we had a very close relationship in the sense that whenever he would go away, I could always expect a letter, if not every day, every other day. and I could always expect a phone call. And now I think the great emptiness is not so much that he's away right now, but that he's away and I'll never get another letter from him, or I won't hear from him again. And when my children begin to, after he's gone for a period of time, they begin to ask me different things about him. They draw pictures and write little notes to him, and they're piling up. And I guess when they really start asking about him, I don't really know exactly how to explain to him that he'll never return. And I think there's a great emptiness.
In the course of his lifetime and his career, did he ever discuss with you the aims of this new organization he founded last year, the Organization for Afro-American Unity?
Well, yes, in particular, one of the aims was internationalizing the problem of the Afro-American in this country. He felt that as long as in a few states we were begging for cups of coffee or things of this sort, that we would not receive rights all over. Just as the white man is able to go all over the face of the earth and receive the same dignity and respect in one country as he does in the other. The Afro-American or the African, wherever he goes, receive indignation and disrespect. And he felt by internationalizing the problem, by helping the Africans, and in turn the Africans helping us to get our rights, that a black man, an Afro-American or an African, could go all over the face of the earth and receive the same dignity, the same respect as any white man. And I think that this was one of the aims, was a very good aim.
Did he ever discuss with you the chance of death, the likelihood that he would be assassinated?
Yes, we discussed it many times, and I have witnessed on several occasions different attempts being made on his life. And I think the press and the police were very unfair in their attitude towards what he was saying. They seemed to make it look as if he was just talking. One paper came out with Malcolm X claims such and such, and I even heard one person on television saying that it was all in his mind, and well, everything that he said concerning this, people tried to make it look ridiculous, tried to make him look ridiculous. Well, it finally happened, and then what just happened?
You felt, too, that he eventually would be assassinated because of his cause and his beliefs?
Yes, I mean, he died for what he believed in. Mm-hmm. He believed with his whole heart, soul, and mind in the struggle of the Afro-Americans in this country.
What about his family?
Welcome back. Leroy Baylor has joined us. But see, that's very interesting for me in particular. You know, I felt so close to Malcolm. As I told you, I got to know his bodyguard real well, and I got to know him as a person. You know, pre-eye-opener, Elijah Muhammad, and his turning him around as far as his outlook on life and being straight, coming out a true gun-ho Marine for the Muslim religion. But I had never heard Betty speak before. And this was like so amazing to me to hear her so gracefully speak. This is shortly after he was murdered. What say you, Brother Leroy? Welcome to the show.
Pardon me, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to co-host with our young brother and his mom. And Sister Betty Shabazz in that clip reflects confidence and knowledge and assurity and fearlessness. When he asked her whether Malcolm had shared with her the purpose and aims of the OAU, she was very clear.
Right.
And that was not just that instance, but instances before, because here she married Malcolm X. She is in a home, meaning their family home, where this man is constantly teaching. He's on the road.
Right.
And just go back a second. When any of our sisters marry a minister or a pastor, I'm saying from the standpoint of a church or a mosque, and they are prominent in the organization that that church or mosque belongs to, that woman is taking on a big responsibility of saying, okay, I do, and I can go along with that particular kind of schedule that he has. So here he is, a master teacher, and she can but gain from that presence, because in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the woman is not a back seat. She's not in the rear. In the rear from the standpoint of the man goes forward and defends the family, and the woman is not to be up front. But she's not in the back in terms of subservient.
Right.
So here she is. What you just see in those couple of minutes, you see the confidence and the assurity that she gained not only from the Nation of Islam teachings that she was into, but from her presence with this brother Malcolm X. It also didn't end there. You know, I'm looking at her, and she can make eye contact. A lot of us don't make eye contact. And she's very humble, and she is one of the stories of black history that has not been told properly yet, because of her influence in not only in the Nation of Islam, but after her husband dies, she is assassinated, she becomes father and mother. And she never relinquished that particular role. When I say the particular role, she never relinquished that role at all. She kept learning, and she kept teaching, and she kept being the mainstay in her family, not only for the children, but eventually the grandchildren. And there's a lesson to be learned from that. She also was the inspiration to thousands of students who came through Medgar Evers and other schools that she would make appearances at. Not only that, but she impacted on thousands of black women from coast to coast and internationally, because she would appear at various venues such as the Essence gathering and other gatherings around the nation. And black women, prominent black women, have been influenced by Betty Shabazz, including such women as Oprah Winfrey. And what Malcolm taught her lives beyond the grave because of the impact.
That's right.
And there's more and more to her story than has been made known. But she cannot be given too much credit. When I say the credit that she's due has not been given to her yet.
Right. And at the time, she thought that she was having one kid, and she found out later, before we could tell how many kids we were having, she wound up having twins. So she raised 6 kids. Ashley Sharpton's supposed to have been here today, but I wanted her to give you an insight story of what kind of real woman she was, from the prospect of her benevolence and her giving, and all this came from training in love energy. And I just want to show another piece from her. This is Malcolm talking about coming back from Mecca. Show the one about Malcolm and religion. We'll come right back at you. A few technical difficulties, but we'll get through it.
Would you like to say a word or two, Mrs. Malcolm X, about the charges made by the press some time ago that he returned from Red China with a lot of money, trunkloads of money?
Oh, yes. They were wondering, you know, how he was supporting his family. And they were saying that every time he came into the country that he would, you know, bring bucket loads, literally speaking, bucket loads of money in, you know, from these, from Red China and countries like that. It was ridiculous.
In another area of life, at one time, when he was a member of the Muslims, he seemed to have disrespect for the civil rights leaders, particularly Martin Luther King, and we've noticed in recent months since he organized the Afro-American Unity Organization that he changed in his attitude toward Martin Luther King. Did he talk with you about that at all?
Yes, well, I think you'll find that his attitude changed tremendously after he left the Black Muslim movement and traveled abroad. He made 2 trips abroad. And the last one, he spent 5 months abroad, and it really broadened his scope, so to speak.
Well, they say travel broadens your scope, and as much traveling as I did during the past 5 weeks, I think I would be in bad shape if it didn't make my scope at least more broad than it was before I left. One of the things that I learned in the Muslim world, I didn't see any racism. I didn't see any conflict between the people over there because of the colors of their skin or the differences in color of skin. And in every country that I entered, there were Muslims who were black, brown, red, yellow, and white. And there was no racist attitude in any of them. Then when I was in Arabia during the pilgrimage, I had many different occasions when I would be involved with persons who would be considered white in America, who would be called white. They had blue eyes, blonde hair, and white skin. Yet they themselves didn't act like American whites act toward non-whites. There was a bond, a mutual understanding. There was an attitude of brotherhood practiced at all times. I analyzed it, or I should say at least I studied it, because here in America, our experience always was, it was almost impossible to find whites who didn't act white, especially around non-whites. So the conclusion that I reached was that these people who had accepted the religion of Islam, who had accepted the existence of one God, automatically the chain reaction effect that this has, they would also have to accept the fact that everybody belongs to one family, one human family. So by accepting the oneness of God and the oneness of the human family, I believe the tendency to look upon each other according to the differences in color automatically was eliminated. Since they didn't regard themselves as white per se, as the American white man does, they didn't act white. They acted like humans. They acted like they were part of the human family and all others present were part of the human family. Now this was the first experience, or the first time that I had ever experienced this. And as I wrote to some friends, if the religion of Islam could eliminate racism from among the societies that exist in Africa, Asia,
Come on, come back to it. Seems like every important point, seems like we've got a lot of problems in today. We're talking about live television. I was bragging about, yes. I've been here 20 years doing live TV. And I mean, you might not have noticed, but we've had a few technical problems going on here in the studio. But that to me was one of the most profound moments of viewing this whole piece, see? Because I've heard so many stories about Malcolm coming back from Mecca, how he had changed his attitude about white people, how the white man was no longer the devil, that, well, you see here, like in the opening piece in the Oxford piece where he says, well, I'll work with anybody, all right? I didn't show the piece where him and Malcolm, him and Martin argue about, he called Malcolm Martin a Tom in the early days. But see, this is a revived Martin, Malcolm. But you see, I'm so amazed the way he explained it, because so many other people explained it so many different ways. But he just made it simply that if people took up the Muslim religion, they would become human. I mean...
What he's saying is that Islam is for freedom, justice, and equality.
Okay.
You can't be a Muslim and be dominant over another group just based on your whim of being dominant. You know, something else has to take place, knowledge, maybe status in life. But here are the key things when you play that clip again. He says when he was over there, over there, a lot of people transfer what he said over there to here. Here is Babylon.
Okay.
This is Babylon. Anything goes in Babylon.
Right.
Lynchings go in Babylon. A young boy goes to school. He does what his mom and dad guides him to do.
Right.
He scores high in tests. He's a nice guy.
Right.
And he has this confidence. And his back is straight. And
you're speaking about Malcolm Xavier.
Definitely.
Of course.
And what happens, but that's the name that's on that individual.
Right.
But you're not the first person that it happened to. It wasn't about an X on a sweatshirt.
So the young black man being.
I'm sorry.
It's about a young black man being knowledgeable.
About a young black man being knowledgeable and self-confident and walking with a straight back.
Right.
And not see in Catholic school. In Catholic school, wherever the Catholic school is, you will observe the children around a priest. And they're looking up to him because he's got his, you know, long, and they hold. Why do I know that? I did that. We be holding on to the casket, whatever that thing is called, the black. But he's a man, but we don't know that. He's a direct line, an indirect line. The Pope, from God to the Pope, from the Pope to the Cardinal, from the Cardinal to the priest. So they carry all that stuff. So if you're in a school where you're not doing that, looking up,
he's not.
Gee whiz, you know, because you got the self-conscious, you got a father and mother at home who are conscious individuals. They see that. He stands out. Not because they ain't no fault of yours. You say, Dad, you know,
but the school's mostly black.
I just want, that's all. What I'm saying is that when an individual like our young brother here appears on the scene, he becomes a target.
Okay.
He becomes a target in corporate America.
Because
now,
of
the target doesn't mean that you knock out. The target means that they'll slide somebody up next to you to pull you off from your own people, to make sure your mind and your monies go elsewhere. Okay? So the thing that, the points that Malcolm was making, when he went over there, that's in that area. You can't pull white supremacy over there.
Okay.
If you do, it's very
That's why I was looking
covert.
for white supremacy.
It's not overt. Okay, when you can, remember he said, but when I came back to America, white people act white. Okay, so what the enemy does, he says, look, you hear what Malcolm said, and he transfers what Malcolm observed over there to here, and it tricks a lot of people, and it gives a lot of us license to hook up in relationships that are detrimental to themselves.
Well, it's divide and conquer. I mean, we see even today, you know, Hafiz was saying that, I was saying to him that Christianity is considered to most Muslims as the religion of the white man, Christianity. That's considered a white man's religion.
When you look at the history of it, they created a religion.
But Christ was a Hebrew and Ethiopian and brown.
They take Jesus and put him over.
But Jesus was a black man. We all know that.
Yeah.
Had to be. It was the neighborhood.
We had that conversation.
Okay. Now, but I mean, we know all. Trump is showing us how foolish and unnecessary a lot of this white racism is all about. I mean, he's showing that the fallacy of the hypocrisy of America is being shown right now in the White House with this clown or con man, because he's conned a lot of people, still conning people, and people want to believe him. And I can't understand this, but this is the world you're in. I mean, it used to be worse than this. Well, but during our day, we were closer to the top. It's confusing sometimes.
That world is going out.
Yeah. We can see it happening right now, today.
That world is going out,
Okay.
but not without a fight.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
yeah.
There you go. There you go. There you
The
go.
principal tells you, or the
Assistant. Yeah.
the official tells you, I voted for Trump. Now, what he's saying is not that I voted for Trump.
Nope.
Yeah,
He's
I'm
saying,
aware.
this is what I stand for.
Right.
Negroes, in his own place, he used another name.
Yeah.
Negroes, look, you got to do what I say.
Right.
Because this ain't no Obama thing.
Right.
Is what he's saying.
That's what he's saying.
Okay? You
That's
got to
right.
look at,
That's right.
and then when they laugh at you, that's to take you off your confident,
Yeah.
position. Wow, maybe my name is, wow, my mother shouldn't have named me this. My people, she said, I'm going to have my son read one book a week. Child was in the second, third, something like that. So she had him read one book a week.
Right.
Then subsequently, he says, I don't want to read. I said, what? You don't want to read? No, I don't want to read. Why don't you want to? Teacher said I was reading too much.
The teacher.
This is in District 2, on the east side below 72nd Street, top district in New York City. So the white teacher is on her post.
Right.
The white teacher, and I'm not against, quote,
Well,
white
this
people,
is
but in terms of the smartness that's
Yeah.
demonstrated,
Yeah.
you got youngsters in Rikers Island who do not know how to read and write because the school system is pushing them out. You go to Lexington Avenue, 125th Street, you see forced children who've been in foster care who are phased out.
ACS.
And they never learned. They were bouncing from one house
Right,
to another.
right,
This is
right.
our people.
It's planned genocide.
Yes. What I was discussing with him actually is another form of, correct me if I'm wrong, but is teaching them when you get to a certain level, forget where you came from. Forget your legacy.
Right.
Because he is an honor student. He's taking 3 AP courses, advanced placement, and he has a 90 average. He works. He's a good student. What would a smart child want to do with being associated with Malcolm X?
Exactly.
It's basically saying you're too good for that.
That's
you know?
right.
So when you get back into your community, you're supposed to be better than them. Don't want to be.
That's right.
Don't want to be like that. You don't want to emulate someone like that because you're better than that. You're smarter than that, and it teaches, division between blacks.
Well,
One of the things that I loved about President Obama, and again, I'm with him. I'm not against white, but he brought a black woman into the White House,
Yeah,
and I
amen.
think that
A queen.
was the biggest
A queen.
problem.
Not a woman, a queen.
You're right.
Intelligent.
Yes.
A queen.
Brilliant.
All right.
And that was the problem. They don't have a problem with you getting there, but they don't
Right.
like when you remember where you come from. Because this Malcolm X is going to take that name and do something with it. So they'd rather tell him, no, that, ha, 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 and give him a complex that he shouldn't be proud. I mean, for him to tell him, that's not a name you'd want to be associated with, shows a lot. It shows their ignorance.
Yeah.
It comes from ignorance. It shows their racism. And it's trying to, because don't forget, although the school is 90% black, a lot of them are on athletic scholarships. Okay, so you can buy
the Mandingo
silence.
complex.
That school
Okay,
is a factory.
he's there on academic, right?
Well,
so there's no over his head. They can't take that from him.
You have to understand, when Leroy and I were 17, your age, I mean, we were in an environment where we were unique individuals. We didn't have any fear of anything. Everybody white in those days wanted to be black. We were it people. I mean, contrary to whatever people tell you about. But in the 50s, you're kidding? We were the lovers. We were the dressers. We were
That's
The
right.
dance.
the
Okay.
athletes. We were the dancers. If
Dressing
anything,
like them.
Emmett Till and
Yeah,
was being
well,
crucified in
for this
Mississippi.
one, yeah.
Why? Because he took down some pictures of some white girls. I mean, we were the lovers, we were everything. I mean, it was a joke. We'd go to Coney Island and watch people lay in the sun and get brown. It was a joke. White racism has always been funny to me, because they always wanted to be like me, so we didn't have any complexes. I mean, the crowd we grew up in, we grew up on the same corner. It was a Sugar Bowl.
Trendsetters.
Trendsetters. I mean, we were the folks. Come on, we're going to do later shows about that. But see, you are on that edge now, where you shouldn't have any fear. You look at the ignorance that's going around you. They laugh at you. They're the ignorant ones. Look at them. Look how simple they are. Look at Trump. He's making a big buffoon of himself. This is a blessing for us to see what white supremacy can do for you. Now, what are white supremacists thinking about Donald Trump? He's bringing back the Nazis, the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, hate. Hate destroys the human that's hating. Don't hate the white man. Just like Malcolm Turner said, I'll work with anybody.
Yes.
I don't care what color you are. He found out there was one race, one tribe, like in the Black Panther. The ending of the movie, they say there's these technological superior people come down and say, well, there's one tribe, the human tribe. And this is the way we as black people have to think, like the Black Panther. You're just honored to be who you are. Don't take a back step on anybody. Your name Malcolm X. Whoa, I'm Malcolm X.
That's right.
Stick your chest out. Yes, I am Malcolm X. What, sucker? Which way we gonna go? I'll kill you with intellect or physically. There's nothing you can do to me. This has been planned genocide since the last 400 years. And the worst disease we have is the mental thing that we're stuck on ourselves. If we learn to, like in the Black Panther, we learn to incorporate our super energy in everything we do. We strive for it. We're geniuses at everything. And we're going to bring up the Dogons again.
They are always present, the Dogon of Mali, and how they could see stars that these people have just discovered by way of a telescope. I like to use scripture, and I'm not that grounded in scripture to tell you the chapter and the verse, but I know stories.
Right.
And one that applies to your generation is, for me, King Herod,
who
knew that a Savior would be born.
That's right.
The Savior is plural. The FBI, Hoover, he said we must set up a situation where we must stop a black Messiah from arising among the people.
Right.
Because a Messiah is someone who can call the people beyond the propaganda that has been set against the people. His voice or her voice can be heard above the propaganda. Now, it's not one individual, it's your whole generation. The generation.
That's right.
We look at our generation of young people and say, why they do this stupid stuff? It'd be stuff that we wouldn't do. And I'm not talking about little things. They just have no fear. That's the generation that they fear. Have no fear. You have no fear of going into business. You have no fear of seeing yourself running a city. You have no fear of being up in space. You have this. Meanwhile, my generation say, wow, will they let us do it? You don't even have that notion. Say, hey, man, what? I already did it.
We didn't feel that way when we were his age.
Well,
I mean, I thought I could do anything.
We were operating within our own community, and within our own community, there were no bounds.
Right. But we were doing things that no other blacks were doing. Come to find out years later.
We
went to the corporate structure in the early days.
You're right, and I'm not going to push against that. I'm saying that this generation
a whole...
This generation, see, you go to a barber shop today, our contemporaries and younger, and they say, man, they ain't gonna let you do that. You hear that kind of talk.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
And I'm saying that this generation, which comes from parents coming out of the 60s,
right.
The parents have, in the DNA, is more consciousness.
Right.
I'm putting it in my words.
Right.
Okay? And therefore, the mother and the father are teaching the child to be confident to work in the world, not against the world.
Right.
To work in the world.
That's what you have to do.
And then you run into this situation, which is a learning experience for all of our parents. I see your story as being a coloring book.
Mm.
And taking that negative situation and turning it into a positive. Don't have to sell 1 million copies. If you sold 100 copies, and there are enough artists around, say, I'll do it, and put that bad boy together, a story. And you create the ending. The ending is a guy that runs the city, the guy that's married, have 5 children, and so forth and so on. His children are growing up dynamic. We create. We write our history in advance and make it palatable to humanity, and then we go about fulfilling it. But my brother, I listened to you when you was on the show a couple of weeks ago, right? And I heard you on Sharpton, and many of our athletes who are making millions of dollars a year coming through the school system that they come through, the college, like, they don't have no composure. They're not nurtured. And I'm not talking against them, but the schooling that they come through, the big colleges that they come through, except for Georgetown, they're not nurturing the black talent that comes through. You've been nurtured in the first place that you need to be nurtured in, and that's your home. And one thing, my sister, is that the further, my experience, the further you go into the educational system in America, you become distant from your people. And when I say distant from your people, my experience, my mother had to tell me, I know, what did she say? She said, you're just an educated fool. I'm trying to run. She said, I'm trying to argue with my mother. She said, you're just an educated fool. I never forgot more than you'll ever know. I lived, and my mother lived, for me to go back and tell my mom, I said, Mom, you were right on this, you were right on this, you were right on this, you were right on that. She got no further than elementary school.
Well, that mentality back then, my father wanted me to take a trade. He says, no use going to college. You know, you should get a trade. Make sure you know. First thing he taught me to do was how to press clothes, because he was a presser. And my aunt and him owned a tailor shop. So they were independent and free from everybody. And that's how I came up, you know. We had our own business across the street from a church, Convent Avenue Baptist Church, and we were rich. We lived on the 5th floor and had a gorgeous view. He liked to run the stairs. That was Jack.
Beautiful.
Okay.
But Jack was, there were tough days, you know. He ran out of Georgia, he had stood up for his rights and wanted to fight back. He had to leave Georgia, or was it Alabama?
Otherwise, you wouldn't be here today.
I wouldn't be here today. You know? But Jack was tough. We're talking, you know, he'd be 100 and something now. But this is our mentality coming old school. Him and I both are in our 70s, of course, you know that. But the youth of today, watching television today, you've got a universal, and there's no color boundary here today. See, this is what has to be important. When you're saying that you never lose your culture, you've got your label, your culture is labeled right on you. Your name, Malcolm X. Always, and you have a righteous person to be. I mean, you have something to really be proud of. So these people laughing at you is just it's ridiculous. It shows our hypocrisy.
In terms of the friends, your contemporaries in school and also in your neighborhood, how many have indicated a desire, may have expressed a desire to learn more about this Malcolm X that they didn't know about before?
They more have not really asked to know about Malcolm X, but they more have expressed that they want to help with the cause. So that's just mainly
To back you.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
how much have you learned about Malcolm? You're learning more every day, aren't you?
I've learned everything because they don't really teach it in school. So I've had different perspectives on who he was. I'm still learning, building on,
well, we can help you with
as
that.
his daughter said, the stimulus to the reactions instead of just the reactions that they always show in history. So I'm seeing him as not the militant person they always portray him as, but as the loving person, the inclusive person that he was.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to do here at Manhattan Neighborhood Network is you're going to be sitting right here one day, you watch.
Right.
I understand you're going through orientation soon.
Yes.
And we have to wait for your birthday, April 20th. He's born April 20th. He's the 25th.
Oh, wow.
And I'm the 27th. So we're going to be we're teammates.
I'm going to have to leave on October.
So you got some mentors around you, and it's a good cause, because it makes us feel good that you are, we have something, for a legacy for Malcolm. That's why I want to show a little bit more about Betty, which is really, it's heartwarming to see her and know what you have to do when you have a person like Malcolm as a husband and a father, and she was just so amazed at how much people loved him.
Yeah.
I had in another piece here. Maybe we have time to play that other one. Play this other one that we have. Which one? How many did I play so far? We have any left? Give me a nod. All right.
I want to say this about, I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say, well, as a mom, I really admire her. And I feel for her. What I have my husband, and I could never imagine having to raise 6 little girls alone. Right. And the fact that she did that, and the fact that she took the trip, you know, she also followed and took the trip, and came back with her own perspective, not just what he learned, but she came back and how important education was, where her children went through private schooling.
That's right.
Went through private schooling, and she actually was a professor. I went to Medgar Evers College, and she was a professor at the time. But I didn't have her, but it was just still that pride, knowing
you knew that she was there. Yes.
was enough.
Fantastic.
You know, and the fact that, you know, he was born on Halsey Street between Malcolm X and Patchen in Brooklyn. So all these things before he were even born was already in my psyche.
Okay.
You know, and to see that she did this, and that she went to nursing school and she moved up the ranks, and she did it on her own, you know, is empowering as a mom, as a woman. And I tell Malcolm, I hope and pray that he becomes the man that Malcolm X never was able to finish being.
Okay.
Because his chapter, unfortunately, was cut short, but he can continue that chapter. And he's going to Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, which is at HBCU. And
that's a Seventh-day Adventist? Yes.
My daughter's there already.
Okay.
He'll be there.
God bless you.
And he's going to keep going. We have to.
God bless you.
We have to.
That's fantastic.
And,
there's a reverend from New York.
One question I wanted to ask is this why you named him Malcolm Xavier?
Yes, it was strategic. It was not by mistake. Right. and it would be that I have 3 children, but that he would have this challenge.
Okay.
You know, and I'm more so proud because we asked him, look, it can be brushed under the rug, you know. We could just not get the sweater and just, what do you want to do? Because I know what I want to do, but what do you want to do?
Beautiful.
You know, because, and I told him the best leaders are the ones that are thrust into it.
Right.
The ones that aspire for it.
Right.
They do too many unscrupulous things. They you know, when it's thrown in your lap, now you have to move. And it's my job, or my husband and our job, to just be behind him and watch him move.
That's right.
And he was the first one to say, I can do this, I can stand alone, even if the kids at school tease me or laugh at me.
It.
But he's had projects
support.
done on him. He's had classmates do papers. We've had a college students want to interview him and do papers and assignments on this issue. So, you know, I said the name that the school tried to bury, they actually resurrected.
They gave it
That's
right.
it. That's it.
There it is.
That's it.
There
so
it
you've
is.
got your calling. And hopefully we can help nurture it here at MNN. Because I'd love to see you speak out and have your own show. I'll help you with that every way I can. You know, welcome to MNN. This is home. Let's make this home.
Yeah.
And you got the firehouse up there, and they're really, I mean, it's fun. This is real fun. I mean, this is a real joy. I don't make any money, but it's completion.
Okay.
It's something I love. I love what I do, and you know, I work for Sharpton, so that keeps me going. And that's another movement. Sharpton is a disciple of Martin Luther King. So you see this whole legacy of ours being black and surviving. These are survivors. You live as long as we have, and under the circumstances of being black in America, and the hypocrisy of America. But still, you play by the rules. Forget about all the hypocrites and play it by the rules and stay straight and true to yourself and true to God. Because there is a God, and all these fools will see that there is a God. You know?
In fact, on their deathbed, they be calling out
Amen.
for that which they have rejected.
Amen.
I wanted to say, just add one last thing about Sister Betty Shabazz, and it's a story that's not told, and that is how she was instrumental in pulling black notables such as Sidney Poitier and others together to finance the Inner City Broadcasting Company.
Oh, really?
Not told, not exposed, but here she is.
Well, that was Percy Sutton.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Percy Sutton was Malcolm's lawyer.
Exactly.
So he helped them when they were down and out. I have a piece on that,
Well,
too.
it's a two-way street. What I'm pointing out is that because of the individuals that Malcolm had impact with, she had impact with, and brought them together to help in that establishment of inner city broadcasting, based on my research.
You have an amazing...
And she was resourceful, because I read that Alex Haley actually gave his royalties over from Roots to her.
Really?
To help her. So she was resourceful, you know. She didn't technically work, but she made an income where she started selling and publicating Malcolm X's speeches and starting to make a way. So she had an entrepreneurship spirit, you know, while the children were little. She had to have an income. But it's nice to know, and I appreciate you two gentlemen being that village, because, you know, you really need these elders to uplift the young man.
With that, we have to go.
All right.
That was quick, right? Always when you're having fun. The God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist experience.
Thank you.
Back.
Thank you.
Thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
We got another
Thank
minute.
you.
Oh, thank you.
For
And
the
the
Bronx.
great dad,
For the
thank
Bronx.
you.
We go to 59 in the Bronx. Go say something, Malcolm. Say about your calling. Whatever you want to. You got
about
45 seconds.
About my calling, I would just say it's to help people who don't have the platform to help themselves.
Amen. Amen.
Beautiful.
Short and sweet. That's great. And what to say about Ma? I mean, you're the creator. You know, you're the human God here, and your guidance as well.
Yes, well, look out for a clothing line for him. I told him, I told him, they won't let you put your name on your own shirt,
Go ahead.
then we're going to start a clothing line.
I was in cut and sew business for a while.
That's right.
There it is.
Power to the
That's
people.
right.
Peace.
That's right. There's a young brother down in, he's older now, in Memphis. He started his own bow tie company. And there's a young brother up
little
here.
boy?
This boy in